Now he is comic actor Matt Berry talking about music and that on TV.
I've always kind of viewed the title sequences and title theme tunes within programmes as being particularly important. There seems to be this sort of trend at the moment to just have literally the title of the show and not have any music at all, which I don't understand. They are great things to basically set the tone of the show that you're about to see. A great example of something not working in any way at all, probably Hollyoaks, which is ugly in all ways kind of possible. On a positive side, at least they've made a title sequence, and it's, you know, and it's more than 3 seconds long. So that brings me around to whom I really want to talk about, and that's Ronnie Hazelhurst. If you watched any comedy throughout the 70s and the 80s, you'll be more than familiar with his theme tunes. I've always adored his work, to be honest. In my opinion, he sets a perfect tone for each programme, you know, that he's been asked to work on. What Ronnie managed to do was create catchy, melodic themes that are impossible to forget. Things like Some Mothers Do Have Them, like 2 recorders. But, you know, you just couldn't, you know, sort of whistle that, you know, forever. Are You Being Served is like a really good example. He was given so little cash that he couldn't afford to pay a percussionist. So what he did was get a tape loop of a till register opening and shutting, and he did that before Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, which is pretty impressive. The Last of the Summer Wine, what Ronnie's done there is an old trick where he's incorporated the show title into the melody. So what's going on there is you're watching the show, listening to the melody, but subconsciously saying the name of the title of the show while you're watching it. In my opinion, not only was he a fantastic composer, but he was also a brilliant arranger. There's something like Butterflies, which is a Dolly Parton song. But if you hear the Dolly Parton version, then you hear the Ronnie Hazelhurst. There's a massive difference, and it's almost sad.
Love is like a butterfly.
I just love, you know, sort of listening to that one. And things like Only Fools and Horses, which nobody thinks of him because everyone knows that it was written and sung by the actual writer, John Sullivan, who sounds like Rodney when he sings it, for some weird reason. Of all Ronnie's work, I would say my favourite piece is Sorry, and again, the visuals work perfectly with the music. What I love about the Sorry title sequence is that what you're seeing is fairly simple animated neon signs which move in time with the music. It just works perfectly. I could watch those all day long.
Now we've got a cartoon from them sick boys at fatpie.com, innit?
We've got an update. Phase 2. Conversation. Association. Integrated. Advert. Sounds awfully complicated. It just means after the conversation, use your RCB box to determine your advert. Don't forget to link arms.
Looked out on me, but I tell you what, I've still got a lipsticks. Oh, for fuck's sake. Stumble over to Sheridan's Cosmetics for lippy blusher Fucking sick of doing them. You got time for that?
Don't worry about it. If it's not Patrick Swayze, it's nothing, mate.
Oh, that's not good news. I remember the days when people lived for my ideas. Next up is what I call an aeroplane.
Yeah, I've got one, it's crap.
It's a flying vessel. Fly that one by again, pal. For carrying people.
It's a bit plain, isn't it? But carry on, pal, carry on.
To new land.
Why, they just made them?
Have them removed.
Look at all them lemons! Are they all for me?
We're down to a skeleton staff now, Wes.
Cheers, Wes! Forget about that tenner, eh?
As time went on, Lazy Lemon's creations fell into decline and he lost control of his empire.
Attention, committee. I present this week's creation, the bin back. Finally bringing together two of the most important elements in our world.
For all this talk about ageism in telly, it's refreshing to see BBC Two bucking the trend by wheeling out a major new drama serial starring a 500-year-old man called Henry. The Tudors is a glossy, sexually charged historical epic very much in the mould of Rome. It stars Jonathan Rhys-Meyers as a young Henry VIII in his pre-beard, pre-mead-gut days, supported by a cast of familiar faces, namely Sam Neill as wormy Cardinal Wolsey and Jeremy Northam as God-fearing Thomas More. The series opened with Sean Pertwee having his successful voiceover career cruelly cut short by some knife-wielding French bastards. See? And this annoys King Henry so much, he decides it's cause for war! And then, before the opening titles have even finished, he nips off for a quick post-declaration of war shag. And then he kisses some boobs, and then he gets talked out of the war, and then he has a post being talked out of a declaration of war shag.
You get the picture. Despite being married to a Spanish MILF, Henry's a bad lad with an eye for the ladies.
In fact, he's a bit like a rock star. He does all the usual rock star cliches. He shags groupies, trashes hotel rooms, gets blowjobs from groupies, hangs out with other rock stars, namely Chris Martin, Daniel Bedingfield, and bloody hell, Avril Lavigne's let herself go. Okay, that wasn't really Daniel Bedingfield, it's Edward Stafford, the Duke of Buckingham, or the Duke of Buckingham, as he'd call himself.
His father seized the crown on the battlefield, and no real claim to it, only for a bastard on his mother's side.
Grace's family is more ancient.
I'm a direct descendant of Edward II. This is my crown, and this is my court, not his crown or his court.
That bloody Henry VIII. Ooh.
It's treason, Your Grace.
No, it's not. It's reason. Reason I hate Henry VIII. Anyway, the Duke of Bedingfield is pretty luckless and dim. He loses jousting tournaments, dresses like Mr. T several hundred years before it's fashionable, and can't walk into a room without catching some cocky Hollyoaks type knocking one up his daughter.
What's this? Brandon.
That's what it looks like.
You violated my daughter.
That's correct for 20 points. And your next question, Lord Buckingham, is what was he violating her with? Anyway, perhaps the unluckiest moment of Daniel's life comes when he's found guilty of treason and sentenced to death by height reduction. The Tudors is all very well made, but it's not without some glaring flaws. Some have questioned the historical accuracy of the series. I'm so completely ignorant about history that doesn't bother me, although I am pretty sure they didn't have desk fans back in ye olden times. The first and most noticeable problem is the sheer amount of sex, which is actually quite distracting. There's bare flesh all over the place, countless sex acts, and even hardcore close-ups of ring-kissing action. Apparently it tastes a bit like licking a battery. Added to that, some of the captions are incredibly patronising, and much of the self-consciously clever political dialogue is outrageously clunky.
As a humanist, I have an abhorrence of war.
In places, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers looks so much like Malcolm McDowell, the whole thing feels like a medieval Clockwork Orange spin-off. What's more, this Henry's just not convincing as a head of state. Even when he's doing politics, you're not convinced he actually understands a word of what's being said.
The treaty also envisages the creation of pan-European institutions.
What's a treaty?
It's the application of humanist principles to international affairs.
That reminds me of something I did the other day.
Okay, that's good. Okay. Great stuff, baby. Okay, what I want you to do is kind of pull a face like the application of humanist principles to international affairs. Okay. Awesome. That like totally sums it up. Now we're going to do fascism, okay?
Anyway, Henry is the main problem with the show. He's just not likeable or interesting enough to warrant your attention. Partly because he's so young, partly because he seems to be wearing hair gel, partly because he spends much of his screen time being showered with gifts or getting nuts deep in a procession of wenches, but mainly because he acts like a prick. For instance, in the second episode, on discovering he's finally fathered a son, he uses it as an opportunity to outboast the Almighty.
I have a son! Ah! I have a son, God! Can you hear me? I have a son!
Yeah, haha, and I have a shoe. God, I have a shoe. Maybe things will improve as the series goes on, but for now, who really wants to watch a show about a shallow, self-centred, petulant arsehole with delusions of grandeur?
Is it? That's about all we got time for this week, yeah? Next time, we're making our own ruthless elimination show and that, yeah? You get me? It will be sick.
Look, when you hear them sirens come here, I can hear them sirens come here.
Charlie's back with a new Screenwipe on BBC4 next Tuesday, same time, 10 o'clock. Next tonight, another chance to see the documentary film about a dedicated, remarkable teacher and his charges in a small, rural French school. The wonderfully warm and witty Être et Avoir. Next.